The following wedges will collectively stabilize the Earth's annual carbon emissions by cutting 8 billion tons.
Wind electricity requires the implementation of approximately 1 million large windmills nationwide. While moderately expensive and requiring about 3% of U.S. land area, the government can subsidize farms for putting a windmill on their farm. This is possible because the land can be used for wind harvesting as well as for crops and pastures.
This inexpensive wedge would require cutting the number of miles traveled by the world's cars in half. This is useful because mass transit and electronic communication are curtailing the need for excess car travel.
Inefficiency in production results in high amounts of emissions. Therefore, this low-cost solution requires plants to have better turbines, use high-temperature fuel cells, and combine fuel cells and turbines. This has a good impact on the environment and benefits the plants through increased productivity using better technology.
While this solution is moderately expensive, it stores 1 billion tons of carbon from coal-burning power plants underground per year, thus preventing it from being released in the air.
Natural gas is more efficient and has a lower carbon content than coal. Thus, displacing 1,400 large coal-electric plants with natural gas plants would produce an effective wedge. While not cheap for the individual companies, this would generate only 1 billion tons of carbon per year, as opposed to the 2 billion tons currently produced by coal-burning plants.
A fairly expensive option, nuclear electric plants are a very promising source of energy. If enough new nuclear electric plants were constructed to triple the world's current nuclear capacity, emissions would be cut by one wedge, assuming they replace coal plants. In fact, if the current nuclear capacity were increased 6 times, 2 wedges would be accounted for, all while producing no CO2.
A potentially expensive option, this would involve establishing windmills that create electricity, which is then used in electrolysis to separate hydrogen from water. While not the most efficient means of reducing carbon emissions, this option would allow for small-scale production of hydrogen as needed by certain groups or individuals as a source of power.
The most challenging of our chosen means of reducing emissions, biofuels, involves using plants like corn and sugarcane to borrow carbon from the atmosphere, then return it as the biofuels are burned. Unfortunately, a full wedge of results from biofuels would necessitate the use of about 1/6 the world's cropland. However, bioengineering plants to improve photosynthesis and lessen land demands is a work currently in progress. These 8 options are the ones we feel are best suited to removing wedges of carbon from our annual emissions. These means are often not cheap and would require a great deal of work to implement. However, the methods selected are diverse and thus could be incorporated in a variety of situations and locations, both domestically or internationally, and on either large or small scales.
As the incorporation of these methods would undoubtedly be a great undertaking, the views of all stakeholders, those affected by this endeavor, should be taken into account. The following stakeholders would likely rate our plan as follows on a 1 to 5 scale.
Taxpayers/consumers. Projected score of 3. The efforts to help our Earth would be admired, but the cost would be great.
Energy companies. Projected score 5. Our plan will open up new markets for energy companies, including wind energy, wind hydrogen, biofuels, and others. However, they will have to create new means of producing.
Environmental groups. Projected score of 5. They will appreciate the 8 billion tons of carbon emissions that will be cut.
Manufacturers. Projected score 5. Our plan opens up new markets for the manufacturers. It also allows for the development of new companies, which could provide an economic boost.
Industrialized country governments. Projected score 5. This provides an economic boost because of all new developments in the energy industry.
Developing country governments. Projected score 2. These nations will not be pleased because they will not be able to afford the implementation of the more expensive alternative energy options.